Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, buckle down because for the next hour and a half, you are getting to listen to my beautiful voice. Before we begin any sort of workout, one should always begin with a warm-up. This helps to prevent injuries such as pulled or torn muscles, and the warm-up increases the heart rate, increases internal body temperature, and brings an increase of blood flow and oxygen to the muscles. First, for this video, we'll begin with a general warm-up, and a general warm-up consists of light physical activity such as walking, riding a bike, jogging, etc. You should begin with a light intensity and progressively increase to moderate or intense intensity. For the sake of this video, I will begin with the stationary bike. As you can see, I look like I'm having such a great time. For this, you will place both feet on the pedals, pedal with one foot till your leg is nearly straight, and then repeat with the second leg. During this exercise, you want to remind yourself to keep your torso against the backrest and sit up straight while riding the bike. Riding a bike is also a really good cardio exercise for athletes who are recovering from lower body injuries due to the fact that it is low impact and allows for the legs to go into flexion and extension in a controlled setting. The stationary bike allows the individual to adjust the intensity and push the pedal down. The higher the intensity, the higher the resistance, and the harder it is to push the pedals. As you may know, there are multiple different types of bikes. The one being shown in my video is called a recumbent bike, and with this one you are mainly using your quadriceps, hamstrings, tibialis anterior, calf muscles, and your glutes. With an upright bike, which is the kind you see in cycling, you're using the same muscles as the recumbent bike, plus the abdominal muscles and arm muscles to hold yourself upright. Just like anything else in this world, there are some pros and cons to this type of bike. So, for example, with the recumbent bike, you may not fully engage the core muscles, and you're using much less body weight while reclining back, requiring less core strength than when pedaling on an upright exercise bike, such as one that you would use in cycling. Moreover, the recumbent bikes only allow a person to assume one specific position. So with the upright, you can lean forward, you can sit up straight, you can lean back. There's multiple different positions that you can be in. Alright, so next up in our general warm-up, we have the treadmill walk to run. So with this exercise, I went ahead and started off going super slow on a super slow walk. And with that, I started with level 1, and for every minute that passed, I increased the intensity to an extra 1. So for example, for the first minute, I was going 1, second minute, I was going 2, third minute, I was going level 3. So as each minute passed, I increased the tempo. That way it would make it a little bit harder and I could warm up slowly. So the goal of this isn't to leave me super tired, it's so that I can warm up my muscles and increase the blood flow into those muscles. I do want to note that depending on your height, what might be super fast for one person might actually be kind of slow for the next person. So for example, going 2.5 for a shorter person, for example me being 5'1", might be way faster in longer strides than it would be for someone who's 6 feet or 5'10". So the taller you are, the longer your strides, and the higher the intensity can be before you start to feel a little bit more of the intensity, if that makes sense. So for example, if I was going 3.5 as an intensity, I would already be running or jogging at that point. For someone who's a little bit taller, y'all would still be in a faster walk, if that would make sense. So now let's go ahead and get into form of walking. That way we know how to walk and what it's supposed to look like. We always want to keep our head up and eyes forward, which I am currently not doing. So that was one thing that I would fix, is keeping my head forward. I will say though, a good tip and trick to do to keep your attention forward is looking at a TV or having your phone in front of you to where you're watching Netflix or TikTok. They actually make these really cool rings now where if you want to watch TikToks, you just press the top or bottom button and it scrolls the phone for you. But biggest thing here is always making sure that you're facing forward, keeping good posture, shoulders back, chest up, head up, which again I'm not doing because I do not have my phone there, so I was just looking at my feet because I'm kind of clumsy, but that's bad form. So next up, you also want to remind yourself to keep that abdominal area engaged while maintaining a neutral spine. You also kind of want to pretend as a cue to have a string attached to the top of your head, and it's pulling it upwards so your body is lifted straight up off of your hips. You want to make sure that your shoulders are rolled back and they aren't hunched, and you want to keep that straight posture the whole time while on the treadmill. That way you have good form. And I'm actually increasing the tempo as we speak. Walking or running on the treadmill should match the way you would walk on the ground. So a common mistake that I see pretty frequently is people alter their gait when on the treadmill. So for example, you want to keep that nice posture with your shoulders back, core tight, chest up. If you keep your arms relaxed, they should swing naturally at your side, kind of like how my arms are doing currently. You also want to try to avoid shortening or adjusting your stride and focused on the natural movement. Another common mistake while using a treadmill is using the handrails, which is actually something we'd like to avoid, because when you put your hands on the handrails, it's actually taking weight off of the quads and all the other active muscles. So for example, if you need to take a break and that's why you're using the handrails, slow your pace or step off for a second until you're ready to go ahead and get back on. The only exception to this rule is if a athlete or patient is coming back from an injury and they're doing rehab. This helps with balance. So they're going to have their hand on the handrails to help with balance, and it also takes away some of the weight. So they're not putting full pressure on that so that it isn't fully affected. Like in battle, every warrior needs a good shield and good armor. So for running, our shield and armor would be our shoes to protect us. These running shoes protect your feet, knees, back, and joints from injury and potentially long-term damage to your body. And I know sometimes they aren't cheap, but sometimes we can find a wraparound for that, which is good insoles. An example of shoes to avoid would be Converse. They're really flat, don't have much cushion on the inside, and aren't very good at taking the rigorous demands of running. So, for example, you'd want a running shoe or a walking shoe, and ideally you'd like to replace them every 6 weeks, depending on how much you run. If it's less that you run or walk, then you can get away with not replacing them as often. But if you run like marathons, you're replacing those pretty often because you want to make sure that the support is there and the cushion for all of the pounding on the ground is supported. Alright, we're getting to the point where I'm beginning to start walking a little bit faster, which means I'm going to run pretty soon. And with that, we're going to go ahead and get into the correct technique for running on a treadmill. You want to make sure that the way you run outside is exactly the same way you would run on a treadmill. So you want to keep your elbows bent at a 90-degree angle, which I'm doing right now. You can see where I changed. And you want to keep those shoulders relaxed, head up, which I am not doing. So make sure you're keeping your head up. You want to swing your arms and hands with the palms facing inward throughout the workout. You do not want your arms to rock back and forth so hard that your body begins to twist as you're running. I'm kind of doing that, so that is one thing that I would fix, is not twisting so much. If you're sprinting, your arms, a cue that I would give my athletes is sunglasses pocket, so your hands would go up to your ears and then you would put the sunglasses back into your pocket, but we're not running to the point where we're sprinting, so you don't have to go as hard with that. So we're only going a slight back and forth. You also want to make sure that you're striking the floor or the belt with the ball of your feet and not your heels, while keeping your feet under your body and not ahead or behind of it. You also tend to make short, choppy strides on a treadmill, but it's best if you run with your natural form. So slow down your pace if your form feels a little bit off with that. Alright, next up we have our specific warm-up. which is used to warm up a specific activity or exercise. So for example, if I was a baseball player warming up my throws, I would warm up my shoulders. And for this one, we are doing lateral arm circles, forwards and backwards, 15 times each. And with this one, you want to make sure that your arms go up past your head and then down and around past your hips. And we're going to do that continuous motion with a strong base. Alright, so next up we have horizontal arm swings. You want to make sure that your arms and wrist are in a line. So I'm kind of going below right here, and I fixed it right here, making sure that our arms and shoulders are aligned. You want to pretend that there is a wall or table below your armpits, that way you're not going below. Making sure that our feet are shoulder width apart, facing forward. I did 30, so 15 alternating hands. When one goes up, the other goes below the next round. I don't know if you can tell right there. And with this one, we're just warming up our shoulders. Alright, next up in the specific warm-up is some torso twists. With this one, you want to keep your feet shoulder width apart. And while we're twisting our torso, our head follows and stays in the middle. So we don't want to keep our head facing forward. We want to keep our head facing the direction that our torso is twisting. So kind of keep it in line. And with this one, we did 30 back and forth, alternating sides. Next up, we have forward leg kicks. So for this one, you want to grab a stationary object or something to keep you stable with the opposite arm of the leg that is kicking. With this one, you want to go up into releve or up onto your tippy toes each time you kick up, kicking that leg and swinging it forward up as high as you can, making sure that our chest is up, our chin is up, and our legs stay completely straight the whole time. If you want to get really fancy, you can swing that arm up just like that and kind of give you more momentum. This is a really great warm-up for athletes that need a little bit more flexibility, such as gymnasts, cheerleaders, or dancers, to go ahead and warm them up for any of the skills like leaps and Next up, we have lateral side kicks. So to begin, you base yourself with facing that stationary object with one arm forward. The leg that is being kicked, that same arm is out to the side. So for example, my right leg is being kicked, so my right arm is out. You're going to swing that leg a little bit forward out in front of you, and then it's going to go out to the side, opening up those hip flexors, making sure that toe is pointed. This exercise is really good for athletes such as gymnasts, cheerleaders, and dancers for skills such as a straddle position, a leap, anything on bars where you kind of have to open up like a kip, anything as far as using your hip flexors. Biggest thing here is making sure that your chin is up, which is something I would correct, and my toe is not pointed, it's actually really flexed, so I would go ahead and point that foot a little bit more. For our last round of kicks, we're going to go ahead and do some backwards kicks. So to begin, you start with one arm bracing yourself on a stationary object and one arm out to the side. We're going to go ahead and do opposite arm, opposite leg. That leg that is kicking back, you're going to keep your shoulders back, head up, and only that leg should be moving. So no other body part should be moving. You shouldn't be rocking back and forth, just the leg kicking back. Making sure that our toes are pointed, which again I am not doing and I need to correct that. And if you want to get really fancy, we can do that arm swing, which is also another great exercise for dancers, gymnasts, and cheerleaders, and helps with balance, coordination, and opening up those hip flexors. Next, we're going to do 30 high knee kicks, alternating 15 for each leg essentially. So for this one, arms are at a 90-degree angle, and we're just bending our knees up to a 90-degree angle, alternating each side. Now we're going to go ahead and do some glute kicks. With this one, arms still are at a 90-degree angle, and we're going to go ahead and flex those knees, kicking our bottom 30 times, alternating 15 each side. And with this one, our chin does stay up. Now for the main segment. So our first modality that we are going to use is resistance training using dumbbells. First up, we have a standing supinated bicep curl, so our palms should be facing up. We're going to start with an extended arm, and to begin the exercise, we'll go ahead and flex that arm up to our shoulder. We're going to do this a total of 8 times on each side. This is specifically working our biceps. Next up, we have a standing prone grip bicep curl. So for this one, our wrist and palm are facing downwards. Same thing, arm starts in an extension and goes up to our shoulder. With this one, you want to keep your head up, which I am not doing, and there we go, I fixed it. And then we'll go ahead and go up and down a total of 8 times. Next up, we have a neutral grip bicep curl. With this one, it could also be called a hammer grip, but that is the incorrect term. With this one, you are starting with your wrists facing inwards, going up and down, flexion extension up to your shoulder, and back down to your hips. For our split squat, we are going to go ahead and start with a dumbbell on each of our hands. Start with 1 foot forward, 1 foot back. You want your stride length to be where you are able to squat down into the back leg and front leg can both go into a 90-degree angle. You want to make sure that that front foot never turns in and stays either completely forward or has a slight turn out, and that back foot is going to go up into releve. Shoulders should be back, and you're going to go straight down with the dumbbells. For this second variation, we have our front foot elevated on a surface. I would usually go for a flatter surface, but this is all I really had in the gym, so I went ahead and just used the plate. You want to make sure that that front foot is turned outward. Once again, our stance should be the same as a regular split squat. Just our front foot being elevated is the only difference. With this one, you still want to make sure that your chest is up. This variation is really good for athletes that are coming back from a knee injury, because it goes ahead and takes away having to go so far as the range of motion and still utilizes that split squat motion. For this third variation, we're going to go ahead and do a back leg elevated split squat. What this does is it puts more of the weight into that front quad. I went ahead and switched legs just because I knew that my weaker leg was not going to be as good. You want to make sure that you balance yourself and put more of that weight in that front foot. Try not to keep that foot off the ground. Shoulders back, chest up. This one is actually a variation that focuses more on the quads and is a little bit more higher level. So if you don't have a good split squat at floor level, go ahead and make sure that that's good before you move on to this. As you can see, I kind of lose my balance with this one because it is a little bit harder to do. For modality number 2, we're going to use resistance training exercises with barbells. First up, we have bench press in a close grip. This grip is great for our lockout strength, strengthening your tricep. It reduces elbow flares and reduces the stress on your shoulders, and it actually activates your upper chest a lot. How to do this is you generally want your hands to be about shoulder width apart or a little bit on the outside. A good way to measure this, I like to do it, is where my thumb meets where the grip part and the smooth part of the bar at, and then I close my fingers. That way it's right where I need it to be. Next up, we have the wide grip bench press. What this one is really good for is maximally engaging the pectoralis major and decreases the range of motion as much as possible in the bench press while reducing the overall load needed to complete the repetition. It's typical for the wide bench press to be a shoulder length and a half of your wingspan. So for me, I just like to go out as far as I can. I like to reach the edge of where the grippy part is, and we did this a total of 8 times. Alright, next up we have a close grip bench press, and I like to set this one up with my arms or hands being inside of what my shoulder width is, so slightly less than shoulder width apart. This close grip bench press differs from the traditional bench press because it has a narrow grip and it emphasizes on building your triceps, and it also does work chest as well just because it is a bench press, but it emphasizes more of the triceps with this variation. I did this a total of 8 times, and you really want to make sure that your elbows go out laterally and not to the front because then you'd have bad form. Alright, next up we have squats using a barbell. Only thing I had available was a Smith machine. We didn't have any free weights or free barbells. So with this one, since I am on a Smith machine, you want to make sure that your feet are slightly forward, not too much, but slightly forward. And you want to start with your legs straight. You want them to be wider than shoulder width apart, back straight. You should engage your core, keeping your chest up on the way down, making sure that your knees do not go inwards and your feet are planted with most of your weight on your heels. Biggest thing here is just staying true to form and making sure that we're not bringing those knees in, kind of like how I kind of did it a little bit. For our second variation of a squat, we're going to go ahead and do a box squat. So with this one, you want to maintain your alignment and begin with a downward movement of bending your hips, knees, and ankles, lowering into the squat until your glutes contact the box. In my case, I used the bench because I did not have a box in my gym, but anything will work. And you want to make sure that your weight of the feet are evenly distributed. This is a really great movement for athletes such as basketball players and volleyball players because they never fully go into that deep squat motion, and this works the squat that they do go into. Alright, next up for this third variation, we're going to do a front squat. And to get set, we want the bar to be on our shoulders in front of our head instead of how we would normally do it with the back squat where the bar is resting on the back of our head. With this one, we're mostly working on our quads, our glutes, our hips, and our hamstrings. This variation is also really good for our abdominal area as well. This was the first time that I had ever done front squat, and I actually really enjoyed it, but the hardest part for me was I noticed I liked to rely more on my right side and pushed harder on that side. So if that was one thing that I could fix, it would be to be more evenly distributed as far as weight goes. And for this one, you also want to make sure that your heels stay planted on the ground and you don't lift those toes up. And with this one, you're just going back up and down a total of 8 times. Next up, we have modality number 3, which is bodyweight calisthenics, and we're going to get right into it. Alright, so for this first variation, we're going to kick up into a handstand doing a lunge lever needle hop. Our hands are in a shoulder width apart length with our hands facing forwards, our back facing the wall. We want our feet together pointed. We're really squeezing our abdominal area, our legs, and pushing up through our shoulders, making sure that our ears and shoulders are in the same area. With this one, you just really want to stay super tight. This is a great exercise for gymnasts, dancers, and cheerleaders With this one, I specifically like to do it with gymnasts because they do a lot of bars and their skills require them to push off of their hands, so this is a really great exercise to strengthen that. For variation number 2, we're going to go ahead and flip to where our stomach is now facing the wall. This one is actually a little bit easier than when your back is facing the wall, so if you're a beginner, this is a great way to kind of work your way into it. You can start with your feet not being as high and then slowly walk your hands closer and closer to the wall to where you are all the way up touching the wall. With this one, you still want your feet together, you're still keeping your arms and shoulders up by your ears, still engaging those glutes and still engaging your abs. This is just a great exercise for gymnasts and cheerleaders as well. Alright, so for this third variation, it is going to be a single arm elevated stomach facing the wall handstand. With this one, it is actually more advanced than the previous exercises, and with this one arm is elevated. It's best to start off with one that's not so wobbly, but I used a ball because that's all I had. Alright, so for this next one we have neutral stance calf raises. With this one, our feet are just facing forward in a regular stance, just going up and down. I like to go on an elevated surface, that way I get more range of motion, but you can do this on a flat surface as well. This is just really working on those calf muscles specifically. For our second variation of calf raises, we're going to go ahead and turn those feet inwards to do an inverted calf raise. Some people like to call them reverse calf raises, but I like to call them inverted because that is what our feet are doing. We're going up and down. What this variation changes is that it's mostly working on the tibialis anterior. Alright, so for this last variation, or our third variation, we're going to turn our feet outwards to where our heels are together, and we're going to go up and down. What this changes is, instead of putting more emphasis on the medial or inner muscles like we did with inverted, we're going to be working on our lateral or outer muscles for this variation. For modality number 4, we're going to go ahead and move on to some Swiss ball exercises. First up, we have a decline push-up with our hands in neutral position, so our hands should be a little bit wider or just about shoulder width apart. We're bending our arms, keeping them at a horizontal line, so our shoulders and elbows should be aligned. With this one, we're just going to go up and down 8 times, making sure that our core is tight. Alright, so for our next variation, or our second variation, we're going to go ahead and do a wide arm length push-up. With this one, our arms are wider than shoulder width apart, our hands are still facing forward. We're going to go up and down 8 times, just as we did before. This variation emphasizes our serratus anterior and works on that muscle a little bit more while still working on our pecs and our arm muscles. Alright, so for this last variation, we're going to start with our arms shoulder width apart, hands facing forward, and we're going to do a decline push-up with our elbows tucked in, so our elbows will go by our side of our torso. What this is focusing on is it puts more emphasis on our triceps and even our lats if you maintain the proper form, and we're going to repeat this a total of 8 times. This exercise is great for core and balance strengthening as well. Alright, first up we have glute bridges with a neutral position. So you're going to start lying face up, bend your knees, and place them on top of the stability ball or Swiss ball. While keeping the ball still, you're going to press through your heels and raise those hips up into the air by squeezing your glute muscles. And you're going to rest on the shoulders and upper back while keeping the body in a straight line from your knees to your head. This mostly works on your glutes, hammies, and even your abdominal area. Alright, so for our second variation, we're going to go ahead and do a glute bridge unilaterally, so that means we're only going to use one leg. With this one, we're going to go ahead and work mostly on our glute maximus, glute medius, and our glute minimus, so it works all three of our glute muscles. With this one, it is a little bit more advanced, so I'd go ahead and wait to do this one until you can do it with both legs, and then when you're ready for it to be a little bit harder, then move on to this exercise. For our last variation, we're going to go ahead and do our glute bridges with our feet together and knees apart. A common name for this is frog glute bridges, but we're going to go ahead and stick with the biomechanical name. What this is working is it goes ahead and activates and strengthens our glutes, our core, and it emphasizes on those inner thighs. I hadn't done this one before, and let me tell you, this one is killer. For modality number 5, we're going to go ahead and use resistance training with plates. Alright, so first up we have our shoulder flexion with standing up with a plate. First, we're going to position our hands at opposite sides of the plate with our arms straight and by our sides. We're going to bring our shoulders back, position our feet to be about shoulder width apart, and we're going to lift that plate up into our arms, become parallel with the floor, so we're going all the way up above our head, and we're going to bring it down slowly. This mostly works on our deltoids. Alright, so for this next exercise, we're going to do shoulder flexion lying supine, so that means we're going to be lying on our backs. For this one, we are going to go ahead and get into position. Our arms are going to start up by our head, legs are going to be straight, so I should be straightening them out right here. From here, you're going to bring your arms down to your hips, keeping your arms super straight, making sure that they do not bend. What this is doing is it's making sure that our back stays straight and we're not leaning forward or leaning back like we would if we would be standing like we did in the first round. With this exercise, we are working on our anterior deltoids, our pectoralis major, and our coracobrachialis. What this is doing is it's working on all those muscles in the shoulder. This is a great exercise for athletes such as basketball players because whenever you throw the ball up, your arms go up past your ears and you're throwing to shoot that ball. This is also really great for gymnasts, especially on bars or whenever they are tumbling because they need their arms by their ears. So this is just a really great strengthening exercise for your shoulders. Alright, so for shoulder flexion via prone, you're laying on your stomach, arms are by your ears, and you are going past your ears, reaching up as far as you can. This one is mostly working on muscles of your mid-back, as well as stabilizer muscles on your rotator cuff. For this next round, we're going to do glute hyperextension via our feet being neutral, so they are both in front, straight out like a normal stance. This is working on strengthening the posterior chain, so our lower back, our glutes, and our hamstrings, and it can be used to improve squat or deadlift and other exercises as well. Round 2, we have glute hyperextensions with your heels together. So to begin, you set the pad just below the hip flexors, setting the feet up with your feet touching with heels together, and then you're going to lower just the torso, allowing the eccentric contraction of the glutes and hamstrings, making sure that our spine stays neutral or slightly flexed throughout the entire movement. Once you've lowered to a stretched position, you are then going to squeeze your glutes and hamstrings, driving the hips into the pad. For round 3, we're going to do glute hyperextension with our toes facing each other. Some common mistakes with this exercise are rushing the motion, which I am currently doing. Another one is overextending at the top, meaning your back is too far arched, which is another thing that I am doing. And the third common mistake is lifting too much weight. Alrighty, next up we have modality number 6, which we will be working with rubber band exercises for the next 2 exercises. First up, we have external lateral rotation while lying supine, which means we will be lying on our back. The external lateral rotation of the arm represents the movement of the humerus when the arm is flexed to a 90-degree angle at the elbow and is externally rotated around the longitudinal plane of the humerus so that the hand moves away from the midline or away medially, and is the opposite of the internal rotation where we do go towards the midline. Alright, so for the first variation, we are going to be sitting up with a supinated grip, meaning that our palms are facing up. The muscles mostly worked during this exercise are the supraspinatus, which abducts the arm, the infraspinatus, which laterally or external rotation of the shoulder, and the teres minor, which also does the lateral/external rotation of the shoulder as well. For round 3, we are going to be doing a sitting position with our hands in a prone grip, meaning our wrists are facing down. 2 pretty common mistakes with this exercise, which I am currently doing right now, is putting our hands in a neutral grip slowly but surely, and lastly, rounding your shoulders, which I'm not currently doing, but it is a pretty common mistake with this exercise. First up, we're going to do an external rotation strengthening exercise. You're going to wrap a band around your knees, either just below or slightly above the knee line. I like to do above. And you're going to lie on your back. You're going to bend your knees at a 90-degree angle and keep your feet together. You're then going to proceed to resist against the band's pull while you're spreading your knees apart as far as you can. For this round, we're going to do side-lying hip external rotation, also known as clamshells. You're going to begin by lying on your side, keeping your heels together and your hips stable, making sure that your heels, hips, and shoulders form a straight line. We're going to lift the top leg 3 to 4 inches off the first knee while keeping your ankles together and ensuring your hips do not rotate. Make sure to go slow and controlled and do not hold at the top. Next up, we're going to do hip external rotation while seated. Along with hip and leg muscles, this exercise tones your glutes and stabilizes your pelvic muscles. Physical therapists often suggest this to their patients, whether they're beginners, to treat their back pain and or sciatica, and can effectively reduce back pain in your lower back and strengthen your core muscles. Next up, we have the cool down phase of our exercise program, which will begin shortly. Alright, so let's begin. What is a cool down? A cool down is designed to promote and recover the body to return to a pre-exercise or pre-workout level. This can be accomplished in many different ways. For example, you can walk, you can jog, you can go on the elliptical, you can stretch. There's multiple different ways. It's mostly to engage and help your body relax and recover, whether that be physically or mentally or both. A cool down offers a number of benefits, including to help recover faster from your workout. Alright, so let's get into some of the negative effects that can happen if you don't complete a cool down. I know it's super tempting to just hop into your car or just relax and lay down after your workout, but that can pose some negative effects if you choose to skip this cool down. For one, you could experience some lightheadedness or even blurred vision if you just suddenly stop a workout and don't allow your body to return to that pre-exercise state back into your homeostasis. You could also risk having some blood pooling, which means that your the blood in your lower extremities could pool and you're not pumping them throughout the body as it should. You're also at a higher risk for injury, meaning that if you avoid the cool down, you can put your body at risk for injuring, meaning that you're more susceptible to injury because the cool down can help to relax the repetitive stress you have put on your muscles and your cartilage and nerves, and it works on healing the micro traumas you caused within your body, such as intense weightlifting sessions. After you finish your workout, spending 5 to 10 minutes performing an effective cool down can relax and lengthen your muscles, which Harvard Health recommends, flowing from one stretch to the next without rest in between, making your cool down more effective. And you can also do yoga or light movements. The American Heart Association recommends for a cool down that you start for about 5 minutes with a walk to get your heart rate down to 120 beats per minute. You can also go on an elliptical or a treadmill for this. From there, after you finish your 5 minutes, move on to stretching and hold each stretch for about 30 seconds minimum, more if you can, and you want to focus on your breathing as you do this stretch. Now let's get into what I'm doing here in this video. We are doing the elliptical. For this, I wanted to reduce my speed each time, or intensity each time every minute. We're going for about 5 minutes here. Some common mistakes are not focusing on your speed. So with this, you're either going too fast and you're kind of getting a whole new cardio workout. Instead, focus on your strides per minute and decrease your resistance as you go. Another mistake is improper form. So just like there's a right way to run or to spin, there's a right way to move on the elliptical. You want to make sure that you're keeping your back straight and shoulders back, making sure that your head is up, which I'm doing a better job of on the elliptical because on the treadmill I tend to look down. You also want to make sure that your core is engaged, so tightening that core. Another mistake is you want to avoid leaning too far forward, and you don't want to slump your shoulders or lean onto the handrails. The handrails are there just to kind of guide your arms and get that arm workout in as well. As for your lower body, you want to make sure that your feet are close to the inside edge of the pedals and your legs are slightly bent. So you never ever want to lock out your knees. You always want to have a slight bend. You also want to keep your body weight in your heels, shoulders stacked over your hips, and keep your hips on an even plane of your shoulders and chest pointing forward. So in SparkNotes version, just make sure that everything's aligned and you're straight with good posture, essentially. So next we'll go into how a cool down benefits us after a workout. First reason being it regulates your heart rate. With general exercise, it causes your heart rate to increase, and after exercise, your heart begins to beat faster than normal, and you need to bring it back to its normal rate. Stopping suddenly and quickly without slowing down can gradually cause dizziness, lightheadedness, and it just isn't fun. You want to go ahead and make sure that doesn't happen. Number 2, it reduces the buildup of lactic acid. So after intense workouts, lactic acid builds up in your bodies and can lead to muscle cramping and stiffness. Cooling down helps speeding up the process of releasing the lactic acid in our body accordingly, and your body recovers a little bit faster. It also helps to prevent injuries. So like warming up, cooling down after an exercise can help prevent injuries such as muscle tears. Skipping the cool down phase and stretching after a workout not only slows down the muscle recovery, but it also reduces the benefits gained from your workout. So you're kind of not helping yourself in that situation. Number 4, it helps with body restoration. Our bodies undergo several changes during a workout, and cooling down after a workout helps to restore the body back to its normal condition. So example, your increased temperature, your accelerated breathing, your adrenaline, it kind of brings that all back to normal. And for the last one, it helps with stress relief and relaxation. So it kind of just relaxes your whole body, puts you in a better mood, kind of slows you down a little bit. For the second part of the cool down, we are going to begin the stretching segment of this exercise program. So the question is, when should an athlete begin to stretch? As being told in our book, stretching should be performed after practice or post-practice and competitions, or as a separate session. For this round, we're doing it post-practice or post our exercise. It should be performed within 5 to 10 minutes after practice, because the increased body temperature increases the elastic properties of collagen within our muscles and tendons and allows for a greater stretch magnitude. Post-practice stretching may also decrease muscle soreness, although the evidence on this is ambiguous, but as we were being told, cool down helps to decrease muscle soreness, and this is exactly what we're doing, a cool down. Alright, so for this first round, we have the tricep stretch, or the behind the neck stretch, or aka the chicken wing stretch, as told in our book. First up, you start by standing or sitting. You're going to abduct one of the shoulders and flex that elbow. With that same hand, you're going to bring it towards the opposite scapula, and then you're going to grasp that elbow that's up with the opposite hand and pull the elbow behind the head with the opposite hand to increase the shoulder abduction. This stretch mostly affects the triceps brachii and the latissimus dorsi. We will be doing the stretch for 2 sets of 45 seconds, switching arms past the 45-second mark. Alright, so this next stretch is called a quadricep stretch. You can also do this one side lying, but I like to do this one standing. You'll begin by standing on one foot, bringing that foot up to your glutes, bending that knee during knee flexion, and we're going to hold it for 45 seconds on each side. This mostly works your quadriceps and your iliopsoas. Just note that this stretch occurs as a result of knee flexion and hip extension. So with this one, we're just making sure that our knee is flexed and our hips are extended, keeping our shoulders back, and using that arm to brace ourselves if needed. If not, don't need to do it. I'm switching up right here. Same thing, just bringing that knee up to my glutes, extending the knee, or extending the hips, flexing the knee. This is a great exercise after leg day or after running for a long period of time. So if you're a marathon runner, or if you just lifted weights such as powerlifting or just resistance training in general, this is a great stretch as far as cooling down your legs. For this next exercise or stretch, we will begin with a standing elevated hamstring stretch, holding it for a minute each leg. To begin, you're going to stand tall and place the foot of the leg that you want to lift onto a elevated surface. I just used the treadmill because that's what I had available right then and there. You're going to keep your knees straight and your foot pointed up, keeping your back straight, and you're going to lean forward from your hips, pushing your butt back or your glutes back behind you, and you should feel a stretch down the back of your thigh. Biggest thing here is making sure that your leg stays straight and extended with your foot being pointed up. You want to make sure that your back is straight, so you don't want to be hunched over as far as hollowing, and you want to make sure that you are not looking up but looking at your foot or at your knee and holding it. So you don't want to be bouncing or anything like that. Here I'm switching, so it's been about a minute. It is important to stretch your hamstrings because they play an important role in posture, and if you have lower back pain, the hamstrings also control movements in your legs and pelvis. The hip muscles and hamstrings alter and sometimes correct the position of your pelvis. Tight hamstrings can contribute to lower back pain, and chronically contracted hamstrings pull on the pelvis and flatten the normal arch of your lower back. This can overstretch and weaken muscles, causing lower back pain. Properly stretching your hamstrings helps to ease and prevent back pain. There's several different stretches you can do. The one that we're doing right here is just the standing elevated. When you stretch, you don't want to feel pain in your lower back, hips, or legs. If you do, try to decrease how far you're going or just do a different stretch. People with chronic lower back pain or disc disease should start with easy hamstring stretches while laying on the back, but this one we're going to do standing because we're a little bit higher level. You always want to make sure that you're holding for at least 30 seconds, no less than that. Next up, we have the L-sit, or the sitting toe touch. To begin, you're going to sit with the upper body nearly vertical and your legs straight. From there, you're going to lean forward using your hip flexion and grasp the toes with each hand. You're then going to slightly pull the toes toward the upper body and pull the chest towards the legs. If you have limited flexion, so that means you're not as flexible, try to grab your ankles or just reach as far as you can. The muscles affected during this exercise are the hamstrings, the erector spinae, and the gastrocnemius. I apologize for my dog. She wanted to join me during my stretches. Alright, so let's begin with this next stretch. We're going to do the butterfly for 1 minute. To begin, you're going to start with sitting with the upper body nearly vertical and legs straight. Then you're going to flex both knees, bringing the soles of the feet together. From there, you'll pull the feet towards the body and place the hands on feet and elbows on the legs. You will then pull the torso slightly forward as elbows push down, causing hip abduction. The muscles mostly affected during this stretch are your hip adductors and your sartorius muscles. The more flexible you become, the closer your feet can get to your torso, and also your knees will slowly go farther and farther down to the ground. You won't have to push as hard for that. You can also make it harder by bringing your nose closer to your feet as well. Alright, so for this one we are going to do the straddle stretch, aka the spread eagle, which is kind of a funny name if you ask me. To begin, you'll start with sitting up in a nearly vertical position with legs straight. You will then abduct the hips, spreading the legs as far as possible. You will then reach toward the center as far as you can, and reaching forward, bringing your head down, arms out in front. The muscles affected with this stretch are the gastrocnemius, the hamstrings, the erector spinae, the hip abductors, and the sartorius muscles. I did this stretch a lot in gymnastics. It's just really great at opening the hips and getting your hamstrings and hips really stretched out, in my opinion. Alright, so this next one is a variation of the straddle. It is called a semi-straddle. So with this one, you are going to sit up with the upper body nearly vertical and legs straight. You will then place the sole of your foot on the inner side of the opposite leg. The outer side of the first leg should be resting on the floor. From here, you're going to lean forward using hip flexion, and you will then grasp the toes of the foot that's out in front and slightly pull the toes towards the upper body as the chest is also pulled towards the leg. For this one, you just want to make sure that your foot is flexed, that leg is straight out in front, and the second leg is kind of like a butterfly. So it's kind of a combination of a butterfly and an L stretch, if you ask me a little bit more, but it's also called a figure four. The muscles affected are the gastrocnemius, the hamstrings, and the erector spinae. Alright, so from here we're going to do a shoulder flexion stretch known as a cat stretch. With this one, you're going to start on all fours. From there, you're going to align your hips to your knees and bring your shoulders down to the ground, keeping your arms straight, and hold this for 1 minute. So shoulder stretches can help relieve muscle tension, pain, and tightness in the neck and shoulders. With stiff or tight shoulders, it can lead to discomfort and limit a person's range of motion. If the tightness goes unchecked or you keep letting it get tighter and tighter, it can lead to neck pain and cause tension headaches. Some of the muscles affected during the stretch are the deltoids, the pectoralis major, and the coracobrachialis muscles as well. Alright, so for this round we're going to begin with lying on all fours. From here, our shoulders and wrists will begin staying on top of each other, and we will bring our hips down, straightening out our legs. So it should kind of make a J shape, an upside down J. You want to make sure that your head is facing up and you're actively pushing down your hips and rotating their shoulders back. So this is a great stretch for opening the shoulder blades, the neck, and the collarbones. It improves spinal posture, flexibility, and alignment, and it also reduces back pain and can also improve circulation. You want to make sure that you hold it for about 30 seconds and then come back down, relax a little bit, and then get back into that position. That way you're doing what you need to do. Make sure that you're actively breathing. You don't want to hold your breath. And always be sure to hold stretches for at least 30 seconds before relaxing. Alright, so last up we have the forward lunge, aka the fencer. To begin, you'll start by standing and taking a long step forward with one of your legs and flexing that leg until it is directly over the foot, kind of like how you would do a free weight lunge exercise. From here, you're going to keep that foot flat on the floor, keeping your back straight, and keep the back foot pointed in the same direction as the front foot. It's not necessary to have the heel on the floor, so you can lift that heel up if you want to. You will then keep the torso upright and the hands on hips and the front leg. So I did this one wrong completely. So the problem with this one is my hands and arms are on my knees and my back is not straight. I'm leaning too far into it for this one. For this one, I should have leaned back and put my hands on my hips or by my side. The muscles affected with this exercise are the iliopsoas and the rectus femoris. You're also stretching the hip flexors.